All right, we are live. Shaifali, feel free to take it from here.
Great. Thanks, Abhijit, and thank you all for joining me today. My name is Shaifali Aggarwal, and I am the founder and CEO of Ivy Group, which is a boutique MBA admissions consulting company. And today we are going to be talking about your complete MBA application roadmap. And so I'm excited to share my insights with you as you think about embarking on your MBA application journey. So before that, let's just start with an introduction about Ivy Group. So who are we? So Ivy Group is a boutique MBA admissions consulting company that provides personalized and customized services to clients all over the world who are applying to top-tier business schools. And one of our core strengths is providing in-depth customer service. So we care very deeply about our clients, which is why they always come first. Our mission is really to help clients tell their story to business schools so that they can achieve their dreams and impact the world in whatever field that they're in. And so we really work with you to turn your story and your passions into your success. And as you can see here, our clients have been admitted to many of the world's top business schools, including Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Kellogg, Yale, and Duke, just to name a few. And really, it's been because of tapping into this philosophy of authenticity and storytelling that has helped our clients be really successful. So with respect to my background, I am a graduate of Harvard Business School and Princeton University. I actually started my career in finance before going down more of an entrepreneurial path, which is why my rich and multifaceted career across really a range of industries and functions makes me very well suited to understand the varied backgrounds of candidates and clients, just like you, who are applying to business school. I actually spent most of my career as a finance professional on Wall Street, where I worked in the investment banking and asset management industries at leading companies like JP Morgan. And I also have experience working in the educational nonprofit sector and as an entrepreneur, founding an online media company. But I've actually always had a very strong interest for education and just feel very lucky to have had the opportunities that I did, which really led me to launching Ivy Group and to where I am today. I've spent many years, almost a decade now, formally, and about 15 years, if we look at the time I did it informally, coaching MBA applicants from all over the world to the MBA programs of their choice. In fact, I was recently ranked #1 in client satisfaction by Poets and Quants and recognized as a top MBA consultant by Business Insider. And I'm actually the only consultant, the only MBA admissions consultant to have been included on both lists. Before starting Ivy Group, I actually did have the opportunity to work at some of the bigger admissions consulting firms in a consulting capacity as I gained experience in the space. And at HBS, I also had the opportunity to serve as VP admissions of the Women's Student Association. And so in that role, I collaborated directly with the HBS admissions office as a bridge between current students and prospective and admitted students. I've also been a featured speaker on the QS World MBA Tour, of course, have led many webinars on GMAT Club and have been quoted as an expert in US News multiple times and have been a contributor to Forbes, Entrepreneur, and the Muse. And I am also a member of the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. And so I really like to view myself as a master weaver when it comes to tying together the unique threads of my client stories to help them really craft the most authentic and compelling MBA applications. And that's what I really love to do, is just really tell stories. And so with that introduction out of the way, let's talk about some of the current trends we're seeing in the MBA admissions space. So first off, the number of applications has increased as expected, resulting in an even more competitive process. So we are, of course, facing an unparalleled event in our lives with the pandemic, which has led to a weaker economy. And in this sort of a situation, the volume of business school applications will typically increase because that metric tends to be countercyclical in nature. So when the economy is strong and there's a robust job market, people decide to continue working, leading to fewer business school applications. On the flip side, which is what we're experiencing right now, when the economy is in a recession and the job market is weak, many people think about returning to school. And so the number of job applications increases. And so this has definitely played out, for sure, in what we've been seeing with the trends this year. Now, the other important trend is that schools have been showing flexibility with respect to the submission of the GMAT and GRE scores. Now, we don't know if this is going to extend into next year, but for instance, MIT Sloan waived the GMAT and the GRE. Other schools like Wharton have provided waivers if candidates had a compelling reason. So that has been an interesting trend. It has not been standardized across all the schools. And so it's something that we'll just need to see whether it plays out or not as we look out to next year. But it is definitely a factor that has played into the admissions process this year. And then, of course, it's becoming easier than ever to learn about business schools given the virtual environment. So essentially, everyone is on an even playing field. No one can really visit schools in person. And so tons of virtual events that you can participate in as you learn about the schools. So what does this mean for you? So as you look at this chart, given how competitive the MBA landscape has always been and how competitive it has become, it's extremely important to understand what your bucket is, essentially to understand what the MBA landscape looks like. And so the top two MBA programs, Stanford and Harvard, as you can see right here on the slide, have acceptance rates of 6% and 11% respectively. If you look at the top 7 schools, or the M7 as they are called, they have acceptance rates ranging from 6% to 24%. So since the process is so competitive, it's extremely important to put your best foot forward when you are applying to business school. And I really cannot stress that enough. So part of that process of putting your best foot forward is understanding what that roadmap looks like. So what are you getting yourself into? What are the different pieces of the application process? So let's go through that. So let's go through what the MBA application roadmap looks like. So this captures in one picture what the roadmap is and what the different processes are. And as you can see here, and as you probably know if you've already jumped into the process, it is comprised of multiple steps. So it entails conducting school research. It entails taking the GMAT or the GRE, and in some cases, it might make sense to take the executive assessment. For other people, if you're international, you may have to take an exam like the TOEFL. So there's standardized testing that's required. Then you need to think about your strategy and your story. Unfortunately, too many people jump into the application without really taking a step back and thinking about what their story is. What is their strategy as they think about approaching the application process? So that's really important. Then you need to work on a really strong resume. The essay process itself is comprised of multiple steps. Then you have to look at the short answers within the applications. You need to think about recommendation letters. And then once all that is submitted, you need to start thinking about interview prep and interviewing. And then eventually you get your notification and that decision. And so as we are sitting here today, in the early part of the year, what you really want to be focusing on is really these first three steps: school research, taking the standardized test, and the strategy and your story. So let's go through each of these pieces in detail, so you really have a sense of what you need to be doing as you look at this roadmap. Okay, so the first step is really focusing on school research. And there are multiple ways to learn about MBA programs, right? Now, when applying to MBA programs, it is really, really important to take the time to get to know the schools. Through your application, your essays, the interviews, etc., admissions committees will want to understand why you are interested in attending their school, how you'll contribute, and why you are a good fit. And when thinking about your response to these questions, it's important to be specific, or as specific as you can be. There is no cookie cutter approach to these questions. So as you look at the different ways you can research schools, keep the following questions in mind as you do your research. What does the curriculum look like? How are the classes taught? How will a particular school's program help you to achieve your post-MBA goals? What is the culture like? What sorts of activities and clubs do you see yourself getting involved in? How will you give back to your class? So here are 5 different ways that you can start to think about doing that research. And again, this is something that I always consider to be a work in progress. You should consistently and constantly be doing research as you go through this process. So of course, the website. A school's website is the best place to just start and get to know a school as you learn about their classes and how their sort of curriculum works, etc. Then of course, you can do virtual school visits. So unfortunately, of course, in this environment, on-campus visits are not possible, but many schools are offering virtual visits in conjunction with virtual info sessions and webinars. And the beauty about sort of these virtual aspects is that it is leveling the playing field for everybody, and it doesn't matter where you live. All you need is an internet connection. So check the school's websites to see when these webinars and info sessions are taking place, and sign up for them. The more you learn, the better off you will be. Now, the other sort of place to do research is with virtual MBA conferences. With these conferences, it's a great way to meet admissions officers and learn about the schools. During these events, admissions officers may give presentations, they might participate in panels, and they might even offer one-on-one meetings. So you should bring your resume and be prepared to ask questions. And then, of course, conversations with students and alums. Speaking with students and alums is a really great way of learning about schools. And often, these conversations can provide a lot of unique insight into a school that you can potentially weave into essays and interviews. So really, bottom line, in this day and age, there really is no excuse as to why you haven't done your research. And having done this now for many years, I can tell you that those students and those candidates who put in the time and the effort to learn about the schools typically have really compelling reasons as to why they want to attend the school. And that's always critical for the application. Okay. So now here is the next step. GMAT, GRE, as mentioned before, it might make sense to take the executive assessment. For some of you, you may also have to take the TOEFL, etc. But take the exam as early as possible. And I cannot stress that enough. The earlier you take it, the better off you will be. It can be done, but it is difficult to, in parallel, study for the exam and work on your applications at the same time. And you will take a lot of pressure off of yourself if you take the exam now. So understand the requirements for each school. That's really important, right? Will a school allow a waiver? What exams do they take? What is the average GMAT, GRE, et cetera, for that school? It's always good to be aiming for at least that average to be competitive. So understand the requirements for each school. Now, know your strengths and weaknesses and take the exam that you feel you can do the best on. In the past, there used to be a bit more of a bias, I would say, towards the GMAT because the quant is known to be more rigorous for the GMAT, but that has really changed over time, and especially with the online exams coming into play this past year, with the GRE being a little bit more friendly when it first came out versus the GMAT. So the schools have become indifferent between the exams, so you should really take the one that you feel you can do the best on to really maximize that score. And if you need to take a practice test for both and see which one you're doing better on, that's fine. And of course, give yourself ample time to study, to take the exam, and retake the exam if necessary. Many people, and most people I would say, end up scoring lower on the actual exam than the practice test. And I think test anxiety, et cetera, may play into that. But give yourself the opportunity to retake the exam if you need to. Don't kind of let it be that one shot and that's it, because you're going to put a lot of pressure on yourself. So this is, again, this piece, the school research, all of that you should be thinking about doing now, especially if you are looking at applying to schools in round one, round two. Which feel like they're kind of far away, but I guarantee you will be here before you know it. Okay. So now next is your strategy and your story. Now at Ivy Group, we focus a lot on authenticity. That really is the cornerstone of the work we do with clients. And so that's why I really love this quote. Be yourself, everyone else is already taken. It's what Oscar Wilde said. And I think it's really, really true. I think there's a lot of emphasis on seeing what the competition is doing and not really focusing on who you are and what your unique attributes are. So what does this mean? So first off, draw upon your unique experiences and perspectives. So what you have experienced throughout your life, in school, personally, at the workplace, is what makes you you. There's no other single person in this world who has walked in your shoes, had your exact experiences, and seen the world from your eyes. And so what may have helped a friend or colleague gain admission to a business school will most likely not work for you. So think about the experiences that have shaped you into the person you are today and jot those down. Remember, admissions committees want to understand the living person beyond the two-dimensional application. Okay. Next, talk about the why. So business school applications are really more about the why than the what. So anyone can talk about his or her experiences, right? But what really sets an application apart is providing color on why something has been instrumental in shaping you, or why something means so much to you. And it's this interpretation, for instance, the impact that you've had, the obstacles that you've overcome, the lessons that you have learned, is what makes you unique. So your diverse insights will also help you to be a meaningful contributor to your class. And so it's really imperative that the why comes through in your applications. And finally, convey your voice. So while business school essays are formal pieces of work, they should be written in your voice. So if you have a certain style of writing, don't be afraid to let that shine through. And although you may get feedback from other people, it's extremely important that you make the ultimate call when it comes to your essays, since they represent you, your accomplishments, your perspective, and your values. So now as we dig in even further into your strategy and story, let's talk about crafting your post-MBA career goals. So practically every business school will want you to state your post-MBA career goals. And usually this includes both your short-term goal and your long-term goal. Too many times I've seen candidates not putting in enough thought into their post-MBA goals and how their prior experiences have prepared them to achieve those goals. And so this results in post-MBA goals that are unclear or too broad, which can hurt a candidate's chances of admission. So as we think about goals and post-MBA career goals, what should they really encompass? So first off, your goals should be specific. So candidates are often hesitant to be specific in their post-MBA goals since they are unsure of what they really want to do after business school. And so they're concerned about being locked into what they write about. Be rest assured that once you're in business school, you can change your goals. But for business school application purposes, you should be able to state goals that you plan to follow at that point in time and that you are very excited about pursuing. Now, specific post-MBA goals will stand out a lot more than those that are too broad. So, for instance, instead of saying that you're interested in pursuing a career in healthcare, which is broad, it's better to say that you want to pursue a career at a medical devices company or in the medical devices space, which is easier to visualize and is much more tangible. Your goals should also be credible, which means that they should build upon what you've already done in the past. Now, significant career switches can often come across as unattainable because you may not have any prior experience in order to achieve it. So let's just say, for example, you're working in investment banking and you've been focusing on the retail or consumer space and you want to switch to the field of healthcare after graduating from business school. That will be a tough sell for admissions committees. But if you want to work in corporate development within a retail or consumer company, that will be much more believable given your prior finance experience working in those industries as an investment banker. And finally, your goals should be achievable. So admissions committees want to see that you have what it takes to accomplish your goals. And so a lot of this really boils down to the qualities that you already possess and that you've displayed in the past in order to succeed in your prior endeavors. So admissions committees really assess your past achievements as indicators of your success in the future, including your ability to achieve your post-MBA career goals. So it's really important to demonstrate those qualities throughout your application. So again, now as we are sitting here in the early part of 2021, really think about your school research, GMAT, GRE, and your strategy and story, which will definitely give you a leg up as you look ahead to the rounds starting in the fall. Okay. So now let's move into the resume step. Now, the resume is a very important element of the business school application process. And it really provides admissions committees with a concise snapshot of your accomplishments to date. Oftentimes, candidates will submit a resume that they would use for professional purposes, but the business school resume should be tailored a little bit differently. And here is how you should craft and think about your resume when applying to MBA programs. So focus on impact and results. So be achievement and impact oriented. Now, there is a tendency for applicants to just list their responsibilities and tasks in each role without really thinking about the impact and the results. Keep in mind that business schools are seeking candidates who are impact oriented. So this needs to come through very clearly in your resume. So highlight your involvement in extracurricular and community activities too. Now, in your business school resume, of course, it's going to be very professional and focused, but there should also be an emphasis on things you have done in the extracurricular and the community space. Business schools really gauge how involved you will be in their communities as a student through what you've already done or are already doing. So if you've been heavily involved in your communities, you should, of course, note down what you've been doing. And if your extracurriculars have been on the lighter side, then that's something you should start to think about working on, given that time is on your side. And then finally, keep an eye towards formatting. Unless a school otherwise states it's okay, your resume really should be 1 page in length, and it should be readable. Too many times I've seen candidates squeeze in as much information as possible by reducing the margins and the font. And while it is okay to play around with the margins and the font a little bit, there should be sufficient white space in your final resume so that no one has to strain their eyes to read it. Remember, at the end of the day, admissions committees members are human, right? So it's in your best interest to submit materials that make it as easy as possible for them to review. Okay. So now the next piece of the roadmap, as we look ahead, and a lot of this will start to come into play once you dig into your actual applications, but it's good to have a holistic understanding of the different pieces. So the first sort of thing to keep in mind when it comes to essays is that they are an opportunity for candidates to share aspects of themselves with the MBA admissions committee in order to really provide a holistic picture of who they are. However, though, what I've seen is that many candidates are daunted by the prospect of writing essays for business school applications. But it can actually be quite enjoyable if you approach it in a systematic way. So the first thing you should do is read the question. Make sure you clearly understand the question that is being asked. So this means reading the question, rereading it again, and then rereading it yet again. Too many times I've seen candidates respond to a question without addressing what the question is asking. And so as you read the question multiple times, think about how you would go about answering it. And jot down some thoughts and some notes. That can always be really helpful. So as you look at the question, think about what you will try to convey in the essay. How will it fit in within the context of the entire essay set in the entire application? How will you structure the essay? Now, once you've done that, outline your response. So start to crystallize your thought process through an essay outline. Now, many candidates just skip this step and jump right into writing the essay, but that often results in an essay that lacks clarity and focus because the writing is done without any clear purpose as to what the end result should be. So your outline is your roadmap for that essay. The outline will help you to pinpoint the content that you want to include in the essay and also make sure the structure is resulting in an essay that will flow smoothly. Now, again, this does not have to be a perfect piece of work. What we're trying to do with the outline is use it as a guide that will help you to stay on track as you start to write the essay. So when you write the essay, follow the outline, right? That's why it's a roadmap, as you formulate your response to the essay prompt. Now, writing the essay should hopefully be more of a seamless process at this point, as you now know exactly what content will be included, and you have a very clear sense of how the essay will be structured. And again, I want to reiterate, although it is a formal piece of work, the essay should express your unique voice. That is what is going to make your essay authentic, and that is what is going to help it to stand out from the rest of the crowd. And then finally, revise your essay. The essay writing process is extremely iterative, so don't expect to write the most polished piece in the first go, or to submit the first draft that you write. Once you have written the first draft, take a step back and come back to it with a fresh set of eyes. Now, if you are planning to get feedback from other people, I recommend doing so earlier in the process rather than later, so that any thoughts can be incorporated at the outset. And again, you don't have to agree with all the feedback that others provide. These are your essays, and so you make the ultimate decisions when it comes to them. These essays are a representation of you and your work. And this is really, I would say, where you'll be spending a bulk of the actual execution when you jump into the actual applications. But it is really, really important in order for the admissions committee to understand who you are. Okay. Now, there are also short answers within the MBA applications. So many business schools will require a candidate to complete these data forms. And these can be questions that ask an applicant to elaborate on areas like his or her professional background, the awards and recognitions achieved, etc. So these are just as important as the rest of the application. But too many times, I see candidates hastily completing these sections, which is a mistake. So make sure you devote enough time to these and don't do this last minute. So that's really the first point. Devote enough time to answering the questions. Some schools, like for instance, Harvard Business School and Stanford, have very in-depth short answers with specified character counts. Now, completing these questions in a rush when you've spent a significant amount of time on the other parts of the application will just undermine the work that you've already done. So treat the short answers as another opportunity to provide additional and different information about your candidacy. Be thoughtful as you address the questions. The application is, again, comprised of multiple pieces, as you're seeing, that when combined, create a holistic picture of who you are. So it is to your advantage to be thoughtful with respect to the questions and the responses, including the short answers. For example, let's just say a bullet on your resume highlights a particular achievement, and it's an accomplishment that you still want to write about in the short answers for that respective role. Then maybe point to a different aspect of the achievement that you may not have already written about already in your resume. With respect to the timeline, I do suggest addressing the short answers once you have solid drafts of your resume and the essays in place, so that you can really determine how to most effectively utilize that space and fill in any gaps. And finally, of course, proofread your responses. Make sure to take a really deep look at them, because these responses are just as important as the rest of everything else. And it's easy to make typos at this stage of the process when you're really close to the finish line. So, for example, make sure that the dates of your employment are consistent with what's on your resume, and that you've clearly answered each question in a compelling way. So now, this is really what you can control here, which is great, right? You have a lot of control over your essays, your short answers. Now, interestingly, when we come to this next step, which is your recommenders, you still have some control over that too, as you think about who you want your recommenders to be, who you think will support your candidacy, as you think about your goals and what you're trying to achieve. So your recommenders should be your biggest supporters. And by pointing to your qualities, your achievements, and any areas of development, your recommenders add more color, they add more breadth and depth to the picture that you are painting of yourself through the other pieces. Now, who should you choose as your recommenders? That's always an important question. Every business school, typically, practically, so let me just take that back, practically every business school will require 2 recommendation letters. Some will require 1, but most of them will require 2, of which 1 should be a current direct supervisor. The second one typically should also be someone who's managed you in a professional capacity. In some rare circumstances, it may make sense to ask someone who has worked with you in an extracurricular activity, but that is rare and needs to be determined on a case-by-case basis. But for the most part, really should be 2 professional recommenders. So keep these tips in mind as you think about who you choose. So first off, your recommenders should know you well. I often get the question as to whether the title of a recommender matters, and the short answer is no. As long as they've supervised you, that's the most important thing. They should be able to comment directly on your work and the qualities that you have through the interaction that they've had with you. So they should know you really well. So having the CEO of your company or a well-known managing director write your recommendation letter can actually backfire if they have not directly supervised you. Now, if they have, that's a different story. But if they have not, many people think that name will go a long way, but the answer is it will not unless they've actually directly worked with you. So your recommenders should believe you are one of the best. So given how competitive the business school admission process is, you really want to choose recommenders who will say that you're one of the best that they've worked with. Many schools will ask recommenders to rate candidates against their peers in the workplace. So needless to say, you want to be ranked very highly on that scale. So don't leave anything to chance. And your recommenders should also complement one another. So when viewed together, they provide a holistic picture of you again. If both of your recommenders focus on all of the exact same things, that is actually a lost opportunity, because you will not be providing the admissions committee with a broad perspective of who you are. So with the right recommenders on your side, shedding important light on your candidacy, you will be able to put together strong applications. And now finally, there's interview prep as we look at that roadmap. So make sure when it comes to interview prep that you are comfortable with these 4 areas before you set foot into an interview. So 1, know your story. And as you dig into your strategy and story and start to develop your essays, this will become a lot easier. Now, what is important here when it comes to knowing your story is being able to express more of the why and less of the what. So the what are the facts: what school you went to, what you studied, where you're working, what your goals are. The why provides the color and the context. So for instance, why did you decide to study your major in college? Why did you decide to join your particular company? Keep in mind that your interviewer typically at a minimum has read your resume. So your interviewers will be most interested in understanding your motivations and passions since they already know the facts. So make sure you know your story and you know the why behind the decisions that you have made. You also want to know the specifics of the school. So knowing why you want to go to business school is a given, but it's also important to be able to convey why a particular school is appealing to you. and why that school will prepare you to attain your post-MBA goals. So again, this means being very, very specific, and this is where the school research, if you've been doing it consistently, this should be pretty straightforward for you. What particular classes are you interested in taking and why? Are there certain professors teaching at the school who have certain research topics that are pertinent to your post-MBA career goals? What particular activities are you interested in participating in and why? How do you see yourself contributing to the schools? And it's really important to understand the culture of a school and why you'll be a good fit. And you will get a sense of that as you dig into the research. Prepare for behavioral questions as well. So these are questions that are meant to assess how you act in different situations. So by asking these questions, schools, again, use your past as an indicator of how you will really act in the future. So these questions usually are in the form of tell me about a time when. And so you really want to provide specific examples that demonstrate how you have acted in those situations. And finally, prepare questions to ask your interviewer. Many times, and most of the time, you will be given the opportunity to do so. And these should be thoughtful questions. These should not be questions where you can easily find the responses on a school's website. So always be prepared as you head into an interview situation. So I know I've thrown a lot at you as we think about the roadmap, and I realize we're early in the process, but the more you know about it, the better off you will be. So as a recap, here again is the MBA application roadmap. And right now, focus on these three elements that are on the left: school research, GMAT, GRE, strategy, and story, because that will set the entire foundation for the actual execution of your applications. So with that presentation, I'd love to sort of talk to you a little bit about why you should partner with Ivy Group. So as mentioned, our passion is helping you to tell your story. The business school process, application process, is more of an art than a science. I cannot stress that enough. And it does require an empathetic team. And so we love to coach, guide, and mentor others. We really use our no stone left unturned approach as we get to know you, and we love to write, which is why we love working with you to help you put together the strongest materials. You will also, through the comprehensive packages, benefit from input from our advisory board, who have also gone to the top business schools and who also understand the MBA admissions process. And we use a very customized approach when working with you. So it is very collaborative. Again, it's all about mentoring, coaching. We have the expertise, but ultimately, this is about you. That's the most important thing at the end of the day. We work with you to help you put together the strongest applications possible. And we offer a range of services, comprehensive packages, hourly services, pre-MBA package, and you can feel free to visit our website to learn more about that or email info@ivygoodcom. And then finally, here are some other resources to think about when it comes to the MBA application process. Okay. So feel free to sign up for our emails on our website. We do send out tips 2 to 3 times a month. Once you sign up, you'll receive our free guide on the top 6 mistakes to avoid when applying to business school. You can visit our website to read more blogs, and you can watch more free videos, other presentations I've given on GMAT Club, etc., about different topics related to the MBA application process. You could also visit our products page to learn more about some of the products we offer, like how to craft a strong resume, etc. And follow us on social media. We are on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And with that, I'm happy to open it up to questions. So I'm just pulling up the questions right now. Okay. All right. So here's a question. Could you please share the ideal time to give the GMAT for January 2022 and September 22 admission intakes? I would say to really get started now. The score is valid for 5 years. And so if you're looking to apply in 2022, I would say to take the exam now. You'll give yourself plenty of time to study and retake it if you need to. Again, with a very, I would say, more of a relaxed time frame, right? Because you don't have that pressure. But if you can take it now and get it out of the way, that is always the thing I would recommend. Just take it now. It is the ideal time now to do that. Let's see here. All right, so if you have a lot of work experience and now you don't have a job, would that matter in your application? So the key thing is to be able to explain why you may have a gap during this time and what you have been doing during that gap. That's really the most important thing. If it's an extended gap, sometimes it can start to become problematic only because you are competing with multiple people who are currently working. And ultimately, business schools, of course, like people who are employed because that's an indication that they will continue to be employed or find a job post-business school. Having a gap per se is not a problem, but you want to be able to find a job as soon as you can. And explain why you have that gap and what you've done during that gap. That's going to be really key as you approach your applications. Okay. So going back to the question of the GMAT, when should we give your GMAT exam for 2021 applications? Now. You should be doing it now. Again, I've worked with candidates who have taken the exam a day before the actual deadline of an application, and it's stressful for the candidate because you're juggling multiple things at once. So you should be taking the GMAT now. So here's another question. Do MBA schools stalk you on social media and networking websites? Do they stalk you? No, but can they take a look at your social media profiles? Certainly, they certainly can, and oftentimes they do. So I actually just recently wrote a blog about this, just last month, earlier this month, about social media. And so you always want to be careful of what you're posting. It's not bad to have a social media account. It can actually be a positive, but you just want to make sure you're not doing anything offensive, that everything lines up. So for instance, on LinkedIn, again, do the dates line up? Do the jobs you've taken on correspond with what you've written in your application? So schools, the social media profiles are not actual components of many schools' applications, but it is certainly something that they can take a look at if they so desire. Okay. So, question here about extracurriculars. Do extracurriculars during the undergrad years count, or do they have to be more recent? College does count, but it should be both in college and post-college. So you really want to be thinking about what you did in college. And of course, that period of time is over for most of you. So what you did is what you did. If you did impactful things, that's great. But you should also be looking at things to do post-college. Okay. All right. So should we be happy about the GMAT waiver for some universities or study for the GMAT regardless? What I found this year when it came to the waivers is that even though there were waivers, those who had actually taken the GMAT or the GRE were in a better position because it is another data point for those schools. So again, put yourself in the admissions committee shoes. If they are comparing you with someone else who has a similar background and they are debating who to go with, and one person has that GMAT score or GRE score and the other person doesn't, 9 times out of 10 or majority of the time, they'll probably go with that person who has the GMAT or GRE score, mainly because it's another data point. So if you're able to, essentially take the exam, I always think it is a good thing to, even though there may be a waiver, because it's just another data point for business schools. And it is a very competitive process. So the more you can give comfort to a business school, that you can handle the rigor of the curriculum, that you are, ready to really give everything you've got, that is always a positive. Okay. So I'm just going to take maybe a couple of more questions here. So since my resume, essays, and short answers are all related to me and my story, how do I manage the problem of redundancy? That's where mapping out, your story, your strategy, and the different pieces starts to come into play. So, for instance, and this is where I went back to, if we go back to what I said in the short answers, if you find that you've written about something in your resume, can you come at it from a different angle? That's how you start to avoid redundancy, is bringing in different facets or different perspectives of things that you've worked on across the different pieces of your application. Okay, so with that, I am going to wrap it up, but I hope this has been helpful for all of you. And, definitely, I think it's great that you have taken time out today. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And it's great that you're thinking about this now. I always say that this process is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So the more time you have on your side, the better off you'll be. So good luck with everything and enjoy the rest of your day or your evening. Thanks.